Good morning, everyone. We're doing another episode of Ezekiel's Art Podcast, episode 18 with Ashton Johnson, and I will be inviting her right now. Hey, how's it going?
Great, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, would you like to introduce yourself to let everybody know what you do and who you are?
Sure. So I'm Ashton Johnson. Just call me Ash. Mostly do character art, but I dabble in tons of different things. It's more of a hobby right now, although I would like to someday make comics. That'd be fun.
That would be cool. So, when did you start making art?
Ah, ever since I can remember, I had to keep my hands moving because I had an accident when I was a toddler. I guess I should start there. So when I was about 16 months old, I had fallen in a fire pit and burned my hands. And a part of that healing process was we had to keep bandaging my fingers to keep the skin from fusing together. You can still see it's a little deformed, but that's where it started. I had to keep my hands moving, and I was fortunate enough that someone loved me enough to help me heal. It's wonderful.
That is pretty awesome. So, what kind of art do you do?
Oh, mostly characters. I like to create fantasy pieces. So I guess here's a good example right here.
Oh,
It's like
wow.
a mermaid dragon thingy. I don't know. I just make stuff, throw it all together. This one you should be familiar with. I drew that on New Year's.
Ah, yeah, I've seen that in the Discord.
Mm-hmm. So
That
stuff
is
like that.
awesome. So, what inspires your character creation?
Hmm. Sorry, I have to think about that one for a moment. Everything really, because I remember being in high school, I would listen to my biology lectures and then start fantasizing. Let's see, just different ways I could incorporate that into creature design. So let's see, what's an example I can pull out? Hmm. So I remember learning about sponges and the interesting ways that they reproduce. Sorry, I'm not very good at talking, but I'm trying. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you had these water-oriented mages and they just like worked their magic into creating these underwater sponge gardens that they could turn into sculptures just by like manipulating the way that these organisms function. And then I thought about seahorses and like how when they stress, their flesh tones darken. And I thought, oh, what if these water mages, like you could see it in their eyes, like it would all revolve around about how they like work their emotions into their magic. I thought it was pretty cool.
That is really cool. So, who inspires you for art? Like, where did you get your art style from?
Ooh, lots of video games actually. I can't say his name, but when I was a teen, I was heavily inspired by Adam what? Adam. I can't say it. It's a foreign name that I can't pronounce, but he worked on art for the Elder Scrolls series. So it all started with Morrowind, Oblivion. He actually did some art for Skyrim. Kind of kicking myself that I didn't bring my Skyrim concept art book up, but I have a whole collection of concept art books from various fantasy RPGs that I love. So that's where I draw inspiration from. I actually do have one up here, actually. Yeah, this one is Dragon Age Inquisition. It's one of my favorites. I just love the way people come together to create these like different concepts. It's just
Hmm.
also amazing. Huh. So yeah, I want to do stuff like that.
Okay. And so, like you said, you wanted to do comic books. Is there anything that you're kind of working on right now that's similar to that?
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of my stuff is in the early brainstorming phases. I mostly focus right now on like making the characters, the worlds, because I'm pretty ambitious. I want to do stuff like, oh man, like Promethea. Did I say
Hmm.
that right? Heavily inspired by that. I'm really fascinated by bringing these occult themes into the comic space. I think it's a wonderful media to work with in that way. So I'm kind of just like biding my time right now, trying to focus my intention on becoming a better artist, but making sure that I give these ideas all the time they need to
Hmm.
grow.
Yeah, that's definitely key because if you try to lock in something too quickly, I've noticed that for myself at least, that if I have too much of a grounded idea when I first start, then I'm limited and my artwork won't grow from that. But if you kind of at least see where it goes as you're working on it, then you can get
Hmm.
so much more out of it that you wouldn't have even imagined before. So, like, when you're doing, because I really, really love the way you do figures. It's amazing because like it's something that's very hard for me. So whenever I see someone that can do it well, it's just mind blowing. How do you imagine your proportions when you're drawing? Do you measure things out, or is it kind
Uh,
of freehand?
Somewhat free-handed. I always draw from reference, but when I start in a page, it always begins with circles. So like I do the circle for the head, and that's the starting point for me figuring out the rest of the body. But I lean heavily into having references ready and available. So almost always I have Pinterest pulled up and like I'm scrolling through trying to find as many poses that represent what I'm going for, and then make sure that I'm referencing the material as I draw so I don't make any mistakes that I would beat myself up for, because I prefer to have things be proportional and anatomically correct if I can.
Yeah,
So like
I totally understand that.
oh yeah, one of my favorite exercises is I will scroll through Pinterest and find images of athletes in motion, because that can tell you a lot about how the body functions if you're just looking at these images and seeing them move. So my go-to would be gymnasts. I love drawing gymnasts because they're always contorting their bodies in these really interesting angles. I'm like, oh, how does that work? So I'll draw that and like throw on some elf ears to make myself happy.
That's an awesome idea. I didn't even think about that because I've been trying to learn figure drawing for a little bit, and like I'll get some photo references, but they're always static. So I should look into like getting some photos of athletes and trying to like just at least get the forms down.
Yeah, because with a lot of images, like there are good poses out there, but they're still poses. You learn a lot more when you see something in motion.
Hmm. So do you keep like a regular exercise practice, or is it just kind of, you know, as
I
the
draw
feeling comes to you?
as the feeling comes to me usually, but I try to draw as frequently as I can. So like I have a pretty heavy work week right now and also a long commute. So for me, my victories are in like getting those 30-minute, maybe 45-minute sketches in where I just like, okay, I can't spend a lot of time looking for a reference. I just like pull up Pinterest, and usually within the first 10, 15 images, I'm like, okay, I'm drawing this. And then I try to get it down as quick as I can. And for me, I'll start with like a simple big highlighter to like just get down all the basic shapes and block it out. And then I'll come in with ink and try to like make it more detailed. But I'm only giving myself maybe 30 minutes to do it. So like it's also a lesson in managing your time as an artist to make sure you're effectively tackling the structure of what you want to make, but also, doing the balance of like, oh, okay, I'm going to work in these tiny details, but the details that matter, that give you more information about what you're trying to convey.
Hmm. And that's something that's very hard for me. I need to practice that more, is not getting caught up in the unnecessary details
Oh
that
yeah.
won't add to the painting or drawing at all. And it's like, oh, I'm just so hyper focused on this one section, and the rest of it just.
Yeah.
Have you seen
Yeah.
that drawing of the horse where it's super pretty, and then the rest of it is just like super sloppy?
Yeah. I think that's the bane of most artists, especially digital artists, because when I have Clip Studio pulled up, I'm in the really bad habit of zooming in at like 200% to like tweak this one pixel, and you zoom out, it's like, wow, there's no difference. I can't tell. So it's more important to focus on the silhouettes, the shape, the color composition before you try to like get into those nitty gritty details, because you could waste a lot of time just like zooming in on this one aspect while it doesn't work with the rest of the piece because you haven't made a solid foundation.
Yeah, that's fucking good. I need to, man. It's just, I feel bad when I talk to artists because I'm like, I need to practice more.
Go for it. This is
Well,
great.
yeah.
Learning is so much fun. God, I'm a nerd.
It really is, and it blows my mind. And it's hard nowadays because there's so much information out there. it's hard to know which one to go with. It's like, should I practice this? Should I practice that? And then trying just to be like, no, just draw some stuff from real life, get some photo references, just practice your basic shapes. Because I'm always wanting to, like, I see things on YouTube and it's like some really cool technique. I'm like, I want to try this. It's like, I'm still learning 30 other things. I need to slow down.
Oh yeah,
But
there's just so much you can do. But to touch up on something you mentioned, there's a lot to learn. So it's better for you as an artist to look at other artists who create things that you want to make and just start there. Like learn by mimicking their style, trying to break it down. Like, okay, how did they do this and that? Like that tends to be a good starting point for you to get closer to what you want to make.
yeah, I should do that. I have a few people on Instagram that I follow that are amazing artists, but they only show like little clips of what they're doing. So I'm like trying to like rewatch the video over and over again. I'm like, wait, how they get that effect? How are they doing that?
Yeah, this
But
isn't the best platform for that. I would go
yeah,
to YouTube. There are lots of great art tutorials on there. One of my favorite artists on YouTube, it's Ethan Becker. He has these great breakdowns. Oh my gosh, he's so funny too. It's just a bonus.
I'll have to check those out because I'm always trying to find more videos. Do you use any like reference books or books that have helped you while
Yeah.
you're drawing?
So I have just one art book that I go to for references, and it's an anatomy one. So it's Classic Human Anatomy and Motion. This is by Valerie L. Winslow. Let me just zoom in there in case people need to see the text. But yeah, this one is gorgeous. Got random doodle just chilling there. But you can see here it has really useful breakdowns. It'll also draw comparisons to things that aren't human bodies, like let's see. I can't find the exact sample I'm thinking of, but it does have very useful breakdowns for like what's going on in the joints here. So it helps to like understand what's going on beneath the skin, beneath the clothes, because you can't effectively draw something if you don't understand its functionality.
Mm-hmm. So what's something that blew your mind and changed how you did your art when you were learning?
For me, I don't have a formal education on art, so what blew my mind that I didn't find out until my 20s was learning about the concept of color harmony. It's so simple now, but like now I see it when I look at other artists who are just starting out. It's like their art, it looks a bit flat color-wise, and that's because there isn't color harmony. So just like a little short explanation of color harmony is that's when you like have your palette, but it's also spread out throughout the page, and it creates this balance. So you see I'm wearing yellow, there's some green in the background. I guess an example of color harmony, just looking at this picture, is like, hey, this is a more saturated yellow, and then you have a beige in the back, and then like all these different greens, and let's see, a little bit of red, and that's like a very nice color combo actually, because when you're picking colors off the color wheel, you want them to sort of be in opposition to each other for contrast. And red and green are excellent examples of that. And then yellow is like a beautiful accent or base to put in with those colors. So I guess that's just one example you can see looking at my camera. But it's not just an art thing. You can like look out at nature, at architecture, and see like, oh, okay, people are already applying this, because even if you don't have a grasp of the concepts, the definitions, this is just how our brains work, how our vision is geared towards picking apart things, because our eyes will fixate on certain combinations.
Is there any particular color combination that you really like to work with?
Okay, for me, in my sketchbooks, I'm kind of limited in that I have a preference for big highlighters. So let me just pull something up real quick. For me, I tend to drift towards like aqua, blues, purples. Here's an example. I drew this cool incubus dude. You've seen it on the
Oh,
Discord,
that's cool.
but it's mostly purple because I'm working with a purple Bic ink pen. And then I have like some purple and bluish highlighters. And I decided to use the bluish green highlighter as more of an accent to add more depth to his flesh tones. Oh, and then like more of the same colors over here with this chick, because like that's my palette. When I'm working traditional, I just get stuck with it. But I also really like the Twilight color palette, so that's what I'll go for usually.
Ah, okay, I see.
I feel that honestly, it's better for me this way traditional with the traditional art because if you have a limited palette you're working with, it frees you up to focus on other things. So for me, it takes out the pressure of like trying to figure out, I don't know, the whole range of colors I want to work with because like I have this is what I can work with, this is what I gotta deal with. So I like that for traditional art. Digital art is a whole different ball game, honestly, because you could spend like so much time just like tweaking colors and it's better to do that at the beginning of a piece than the end of a piece because there's some limits to how you can manipulate it when it's finished. But if you can figure out the palette before you start, it's all the better.
Mm,
Because then you're more conscious of like where you're placing those colors as opposed to just trying to change them after the fact.
yeah. So when you do digital art, what is your process? Because I've only done a little bit of digital art a long time ago.
So for me, the most important step if I'm sitting down to make a serious digital piece is that I will put together a whole mood board. Unfortunately, I don't have any examples I can pull up right now because it's on my laptop. But when I put together a mood board, what I'm pulling are images that represent the poses I want to go for, perhaps some inspiration for design, like let's say I want to make a ballerina. Maybe I'll have a reference image that's just a swan, like an actual swan. And I'll look at the organic designs in the swan's feathers, shapes, and I'll try to pull that into the dress design for the ballerina. Also figure out my colors when I use the mood board. So like it gives me all the building blocks I need to start putting it all together. So first with digital art, I have the mood board. Then I'll go over and start sketching out the piece. It's like a traditional sketch in that I'm just trying to look for composition, how I want the silhouette of the figure I'm drawing to look. And then from there, I try to like make the actual line art. So I'll have a really rough sketch and then I'll go over and have a more concise line art that I then fill in. And then when I fill it in and I get the basic shading and lighting, I'll start painting over the line art to hide it in the piece sort of because I don't like my digital pieces to be I don't have a way to phrase this because this is art, but I'd much rather have something that looks more painterly than a drawing where you can see the colored line art, if that makes sense, because I like to
Yeah,
paint
you don't
over
like
it.
the outlines?
Yeah, I don't like the outline so much for my digital pieces. I like to add a bit more depth by painting over it.
I feel that. Especially since when I started painting, I went from only drawing with pen and ink, and then went to that, and so I was like, I don't like the way this looks anymore because like I'm just so used to putting an outline on everything. Then I was like, I want it to look like my dad's work, so eventually I had to learn how to not use my pen as much and just kind of get a basic kind of sketch, or not even use a sketch at all and just paint straight on the canvas because it does change the way it looks when you have that little outline on there. But I think it can be good for some paintings, like certain styles, but to get that real kind of 3D popping look, it at least defeats it when I try to do it and I try to sketch things out too defined at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and then I
Yeah,
leave it there.
yeah, it's hard because you can either go simplistic or you can go hyper realistic and super
Mm,
defined. Like it's really hard to find a compromise between the two styles because if you're going simplistic, then you really have to focus more on the shapes, the silhouettes, not so much the colors and the depth. And you kind of lose a little bit of that when you transition over to the more complicated things, I think. Although, like, you can really benefit from understanding how to do things simple first, because that's where all the foundational aesthetics are.
hmm So,
Also, a little
so
tangent. You said you were learning from your dad?
Yeah, my dad was an art teacher before I was born, but he's been an artist ever since, he was a kid too.
Ah, that's so
So
cool.
yeah, I grew up with my dad basically obsessing with teaching, trying to teach me art. When I was a kid, I didn't really want to learn. It's like, I just want to draw Mega Man. I want to draw little comic books. And he's like trying to show me how to draw like realistic faces and eyes. And I'm just like, screw that. Now I'm older. I'm like, Dad, I have another question. How do I get this paint to blend right? Yeah, we spend a lot of time just talking while I'm painting, and like he'll just give me advice. It's fun.
Great. For me too, when I was a kid, I just wanted to draw video game characters.
Right? It's the best, and I think that's something people shouldn't discourage too much. Because like my dad tried to get me to draw more realism, but I think he eventually realized just letting someone draw whatever they like, they'll get more in love with art as they go. They don't have to be forced out of their little comfort zone yet. You can explore so much even within just cartoon stuff. Because I used to just love drawing like Charlie Brown too. I was obsessed with like trying to get that whole style down. And my dad would always be like, let me show you how to do like an eye like this. I'm like, nah, I don't want to learn how to do that. But eventually I wanted to learn. So I think as long as you encourage people to just love art the way that they already love it, they'll grow from there. And you don't have to like try to teach them as much. They'll want to learn eventually.
Well, that's the best way to start, and unfortunately a lot of people lose that in the process of trying to become professional.
Mm-hmm.
So really sad the way that plays out. I find that nowadays, like, my struggle is like trying to return to that simplicity where it's like, oh, I love this thing. I just want to render what I loved. So that's why, for me, it's good when I step away from my digital work and just work out my sketchbook. Like this right here, this is pure love. I had no end goal other than like, this is the cover of my sketchbook.
Oh, that's
I want to make it
cool.
beautiful.
So let me see. So that's Mercury. Hermes kind of staff-looking thing. So who is this supposed to be?
Oh, it's not anyone in particular. So when I was drawing this, it is kind of like a gender-bent version of the Hermit tarot card. And the reason I decided to go with this for the covers, I had a friend do a tarot reading for me, and he laughed when he drawed my present card, which was the Hermit. I was like, yeah, that's accurate. So I decided to make the cover that way too. But
that is awesome.
More with a symbolism relating to Mercury than Saturn, and I was like, well, I'm already gender bending it. Might as well make it more personal.
For real. So when it comes to symbolism, what do you like to put into your art?
I love drawing birds. Anything that has this like a avian theme. Even my IG handle is a reflection of my love for birds because it stems from the word aviale, which means bird wings.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there's like a lot of depth to it that, I don't know, it might be corny to explore here, but like it's also a reflection of one of my favorite poems, Dream by Langston Hughes.
Well, do you remember enough of it to recite it? Because I would love to hear it because I haven't heard it before.
Yay, I'm glad you asked. It's like the only poem I have memorized. Okay, so the way it starts. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams go, life is a barren field frozen over with snow. So
that's beautiful.
I always think of my dreams when I thought of the word bird wings or birds, so I always try to incorporate that into my art. But funny thing about this poem is I had a poetry professor who asked us to pick a poem and look for the implicit meaning in the poem. So for me, I was like, I'm just going to pick my favorite. But it kind of forced me to reconsider the poem. So my takeaway was broken wings heal. That barren field that's frozen over with snow, well, when the seasons turn, there's going to be new life. So that's why I like to incorporate this symbolism. It's just so beautiful to me.
Who is your favorite poet?
I want to say Langston Hughes, but I have a few others that I really like. I really like Robert Frost. I'll go with that one.
Good choice. That's a good choice. Is there any other art forms that inspire you as well?
Yeah, a lot of them actually. I say a lot of them, and then my brain just goes blank real quick because I saw more people join. I was like, ah, oh,
That's all right.
Other art forms I really enjoy. Well, I'm just gonna go for an easy one here. Video games. I love video games as an art form because it kind of like has them all rolled into it. During production, you have the code. That's a kind of art. It's the structure that kind of like builds up this 3D space for you to explore, and like there's so much that goes into it. You have 2D artists tackling the concept phases for what you see in a video game, and then you have 3D artists who go in and model it so it becomes something you can like rotate in this digital space and explore. And I love that. Like all the maps you can explore. Skyrim would be a good example. Dragon Age Inquisition, which I shared earlier. So like there's that aspect of the art, but it also has writing and voice actors who bring their voices. That's an art too. Like it's just like all of it in one package for me, and I really love that and enjoy it. So for me, when I'm playing a game, I'm not just playing it to go like pew pew. For me, I like often waste. Oh, it's not a waste of time, but I spend a lot of time just like walking around these 3D spaces, and I'm like, oh, let me zoom in on this digital leaf. Whoa! Like that's what I enjoy.
It's amazing how different the graphics were from just now to 10 years ago. The difference and the amount of detail and art that goes into every video game.
It's
so
insane.
Is there a specific video a specific video game that inspired you when you were younger?
For me, that was the Mass Effect video game series. I really love it. This is my favorite game studio, BioWare. It's not the same studio anymore, but they made my childhood, and they'll always have a special place in my heart for that. But for me, it was BioWare. The first BioWare game I played, I think, was Knights of the Old Republic. So when they came out with the Mass Effect video game series, they took a lot of the Star Wars stuff that they did and like turned it into their own sci-fi universe, and I really enjoyed that. So I think of that when I make it because it's so cool, the different alien races they came up with. Dang it, I also have those concept art books, but they're all the way downstairs. I would have showed you those. But yeah, that's my favorite video game series.
What did you play it on?
I first played it on Xbox 360, but now I have the remastered Legendary Edition on my computer, which is great because I can mod it. So it's super unrealistic, but my like Shepherd character has like this really fancy updo now.
That's awesome.
You can't maintain that in space combat, but it's whatever.
So, pardon me. Is there any video games currently that you are drawing inspiration from?
So right now, I've really been enjoying this video game called Potionomics. It's just like a really cute indie game, and I like the way their art styles. The way the models are animated is just super expressive, and like I've been trying to like reference those expressions during my drawing because I really like the art style they went for there.
Have you ever thought about trying to think of how to phrase this? Sometimes my brain just kind of draws a blank when I'm trying to think of words.
That's all the time.
I'm glad someone else feels it too. Have you tried applying your art, or not applying, like submitting your art to like a video game studio or something, like when you have like a concept? Have you tried that yet?
I used to try and network in the local game scene, and like COVID happened and I kind of fell off the radar there, but it is something I would like to get back into. With my current partner, we're working on a little indie game together, so I make the concept art, he does the 3D modeling. It's a really slow process with just like 3 people on the team, but I think it keeps that hope going.
Man, you're gonna have to send me some examples at some point, because I would love to see that. When I was younger, I used to program video games, but it was like very, very simple 2D, platformer stuff. So I always have respect for anybody that puts in the time to those, because I know it takes a long time when you're working with just a couple people.
Oh yeah, I'm
And
glad I'm not the programmer. They just make the
for
pretty
real.
pictures.
Even then, it still takes a lot of time because you got to think up your ideas and your themes, and that still takes just as long as programming. And then you have
hmm
to execute it and draw it all out.
I actually have an example somewhere in my sketchbook over here, because I usually start with my concepts on paper because it's easier for me to brainstorm with this medium, and then I transition over to digital. I do have concept art of one of the fantasy races that we're putting into the game, like
Oh,
the
that
mushroom people.
that is cool. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I like the jellyfish mushroom with the eye.
Yeah, my boyfriend came up with that one. Let's see, what are they called again? Oculo, of course.
Love it. So
We've had to
what's the
leave so many puns out at this point.
what's the theme for the video game? Is there like a
Theme?
storyline?
Yeah, so I kind of came in late during their production phase because they were coming up with this before I came here. But it's kind of like Mega Man Legends because that was
Oh my God,
our
yes, I love that game.
yeah, yeah. That's what we're going for. Something that's like a soul successor to that. But my boyfriend and our mutual friend, they've been coming up with all the lore, and I'm just like, yes, inspire me. Let me do all this because it's really fun having that synergy of give and take when it comes to working on a project as a team. It's like, okay, ball's in your court. All right, here you go. Cheers now.
I can't wait to see that game when it's done because I'm a huge Mega Man nerd. I even have right here, just in my desk, just random Mega Man stuff.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, ooh, it's gonna be a few years before we're near done with that, but fun stuff.
I got time. So when you are coming up with ideas, do you have a specific way that you like to compose things? Like, do you pick the pose based on the idea you have, or do you just find a reference that you like and then you're like, okay, I'll make it based on this reference?
So it's more like the latter, because when I do have ideas for characters, it's kind of like this weird flux of concepts that's kind of like shifting as I'm thinking about in my head. So what I do is I find a reference, like a pose that I feel conveys the personality of the kind of character I want to make. And then I project those ideas onto the character for that first initial concept, because it makes it easier. Like, okay, found the foundation, let me just project onto it, and then start experimenting from there.
Okay, that's good. That's a good idea. I should try that because, like, I have a little bit of trouble from the what's in my mind to the execution of it, and I've been trying to figure out ways to, get around that. But I like your way of working of find the pose first, then use your ideas onto that once you already have the structure down. That'll probably make it a lot easier.
Well, it would also help to make a mood board or like a little folder where you deposit all the images that you feel loosely inspire this idea you're trying to come up with. So you could do that, you could do what I mentioned before this, or you could just execute it poorly, because that's a good start too.
I do that a lot. But okay, I'll have to try that. So, do you watch any anime?
Yeah, I occasionally watch anime. I really love My Hero Academia. It's kind of mainstream now, but I
That
was
one's a really
really into
good
it
one.
when I was a kid, but I'm not so much of a weeb anymore.
Same. I've toned down a bit, but I was wondering because I noticed your art style has the same kind of gracefulness as anime, with the poses and the because like, have you ever seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
I love that one. Oh, I
That's
love
my
the
favorite
first
as well.
2 seasons of that show.
It gets so much weirder as it goes on,
Yeah.
but the way he just does
Where did I get
the
that?
poses and everything, it really caught my eye because it's like it's not like you see in other cartoons, like at least growing up when I was watching like Scooby-Doo, like there's art in it, but it's not as artistic as I've seen like anime. Like they have like the weird shots, like the person in specific poses, and you can see the composition in it. Whereas like in a lot of the cartoons I grew up with, like Ed, Edd and Eddy, that was very, interesting art style, but it wasn't super, I don't know, artsy,
I think I get what you're
fartsy.
saying there.
Because like when you look at like anime backgrounds, they look like entire paintings, in and of themselves. You just take out the character and you could like put that on your wall. So I was wondering like if other artists are also inspired by that, because that was a huge thing for me, is like wanting to be able to capture that kind of Miyazaki, that kind of background and that painterly quality.
Oh yeah, that stuff's insane. I actually have one of the production art books for Spirited Away, and it's so
Oh my
beautiful
God.
looking at the scenery designs for that game and like seeing the director's commentary and the breakdowns. But yeah, there's a lot of inspiration you can draw from there. No pun intended. But yeah, I definitely go to anime for inspiration, more so for like the characters, because I really enjoy just the variety you get from there. There are like
Mhm.
plenty of fun anime archetypes to pull from. You ever wonder what percentage of your personality is anime?
It used to be 100%. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. I still love anime though. But my problem is that I've seen all my favorites so many times. I'm like, and that's all I want to watch anymore. But I've been watching this really cool new one called Blue Period. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't heard of it.
So it's on Netflix right now, and it's about a kid it's always in high school. It always starts
Oh
off in
yeah,
high
always.
school, and so he's just not doing well. He just doesn't want to do anything. He just hates life, kind of. And then he stumbles across someone that's like doing art, and he talks to them, and they train him a little bit. Then he goes to school, and it's like I found it very informative as well as compelling, because like the way that they write the character, it brings you into situations to where you're learning stuff, and he'll be like, okay, so this is why my painting didn't get accepted or whatever, because the composition was off, and then they'll go into like a whole almost mini lecture of how to do things, but in an interesting way towards part of the story. And so that's one of my favorite animes recently, because it really inspires me to try to do better. And as well, like, I don't feel like I'm wasting time binging watching crap ton of anime, because I'm like, I'm learning things.
Yes, there's justification to this indulgence.
Exactly. I can rationalize this waste of time.
No, I mean, I kind of did that too. Like, my thing for a while was like, okay, I can binge watch anime if I'm on my little exercise bike while I do it. I'm gonna get fit with anime.
I got one right there. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I'll either watch like anime or like some kind of like lecture or something, because like sometimes I'm like, okay, I just want to have something learning on, so that way I feel like I'm doing something at least. But then sometimes I'm like, nah, I just want to zone out. I just want to be able to appreciate some really pretty colors, some really awesome art, and some good
Yeah.
storylines.
Yeah, I feel that too. Like, sometimes I'll listen to music, but generally I lean towards podcasts because like my ADHD brain demands stimulation. So like I'll have something going off in the background so I can feel like I'm passively learning while I'm drawing. But if I get hyper fixated on the art, like it's like later in the stages of putting it together, then like I'll just switch to music so I can just hone in on the details and everything turns out.
Hmm.
I don't think I even hear the music at that point.
Yeah, same. I like to put on the What Magic Is This podcast a lot when especially
Oh
when I'm doing
yeah,
the more
of course.
weird or esoteric paintings. The fairy one was just perfect for what I was working with recently.
Actually, drawing some inspiration from Doug's recent fairy podcast, because like one of the comics I want to make, for me personally, I thought it'd be good to take baby steps and do like smaller web comics before I go to the big stuff I want to do. So for me, a web comic I want to make is it's kind of saturated in that Welsh fairy lore. So I'm kind of like pulling some
Ooh.
inspiration from like listening to Doug's podcast with the fairy episodes. It's a lot of fun right there. But yeah, I want to do like a weird combination where like I have the Welsh fairy lore, but I also want to put in like the Studio Ghibli style art maybe. I don't know. I'm figuring out. It's in that fun conceptual phase where I'm like, okay, I want to do this and this and this. It's like, what do they call it? Scope creep. It's scope creep where you're like, okay, I just want to keep adding in all this different stuff, and then
Hmm.
it becomes this massive thing and you have to trim it down. But I'm in the fun part right
So when you're designing clothes for your character, where do you draw inspiration from? Like, what do you look for?
now. Well, I try to look at the shapes and what they convey about the characters. Like there are I need to stop looking at the people joining. It's a little
Me too.
distracting.
I just like stare.
I'm like,
Hello,
oh,
everybody.
hello. Hi. Okay, so with the shape design, there are some pretty standard practices you can fall back on, like with having blocky shapes, blocky characters, just kind of like have that translation there, or you can like contrast maybe a softer character with very like angular design. So maybe like, hey, they look this way, but their personality actually conveys this. But for me, when I'm coming up with designs, I just scroll through Pinterest. It's like my
Mm,
savior for this. 'Cause I don't like fashion. I don't like making it. It's like a necessity for my characters. Because like I'm really bad about this in my sketchbooks. So I'll like make up the character and like I have the cool hair and the face and all that stuff. And maybe like magic spewing from their fingers and like where are the clothes? I haven't
yeah,
drawn the clothes. I don't want to draw the clothes.
me
Everybody's in a
either.
bikini.
Exactly. It just makes it so much easier if everybody could just be naked. If we didn't have clothes, it would be so much easier to draw. I wouldn't have to try to
Slow
figure
down
out.
for a second.
I'm talking about I'm talking about in drawings,
Yeah, I
not
know.
real life. But like, it would just make it so much easier because, and this is why recently I've been looking through a lot of my stuff. I'm like, I don't really draw clothes that much, and this was just because of I didn't think about using references at all. And so like every single time I try to draw clothes, I'm like, I don't like the way this looks. This doesn't look good.
Oh
And
yeah,
so I'm gonna have to
fabric is
try
really
that.
hard.
I'm gonna have to get Pinterest. Yeah, fabric
Yes, get
is
Pinterest.
so
Do it.
annoying.
But just be prepared to like have Pinterest just like suck up your attention span. You have to stop scrolling at some point.
That's a hard one for me because I just switch between apps and it's like, oh, okay, I'm done scrolling for now. Put my phone down. Well, I'm gonna check out something else. So I get distracted really easily. So that's why I like the idea that you're talking about. Where you put on a podcast. If I have a podcast on, my mind will at least pick up just enough to where it keeps me distracted and I can draw
Hmm.
and not go, oh, I want to check this app. I want to check this app. Someone just texted me. But
Yeah, it helps if you know how to get yourself in the flow state.
yeah, I used to be able to really easily, and then I don't know what happened recently. I guess I just kind of got out of my routine, and so basically it's just making my dopamine cycle a little bit worse.
Hmm.
But that's my own fault for trying to be online enough to where I can, get more views and everything. But then at the same time, I'm like, I should be using this time to create stuff to get viewed. So it's always like
It's
that weird.
horrible. That's why I haven't been posting. I'm like, this is bad for my mental health. Like, I see all
It
these
really
art.
is.
Like, I come to Instagram and I'm scrolling, looking at other artists' work. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. And then I hear them all talking about how they're fighting an algorithm. Like, ah, I don't wanna. I just want to make
Yeah,
art.
for real. It's such a weird world that we're living in right now. Because at least like before the internet, you had basically only the people that you met with. They might see your art, or you could talk to them about it. Now it's like you have the entire world to reach, but also everybody else in the world is trying to reach each other. So it's just this weird attention kind of
Hmm.
economy now,
Yeah.
where everybody's just trying to get some likes, get some follows. And it's not because of the likes and follows that we're trying to do it. It's like we're trying to live and support ourselves, but we need to have the audience in order to get the sales, in order to do what we want. But in order to get the audience, we have to do all this other shit that we don't want to do. Like,
Yeah.
like
Like, you become a
constant
marketer.
posting. Exactly. It's like, I didn't want to do this. I barely even wanted to become an artist. I just want to draw. But I thought, okay, maybe I could do this. And then I realized way later, oh man, this is a lot harder than I thought it'd be.
Yeah, I mean, not only do you have to fight to just get in view, you also have to fight to keep their attention on you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not fair to anyone involved the way that these platforms are set up. It's just, you know, I don't even want to get into that one. Ah,
I feel it.
I like the simplicity of my sketchbook and being able to mentally check out. Like, for me, ideally, I would just put a comic together, release it, and then go back to my hermit cave. Maybe, maybe it gains traction, maybe it doesn't. But it's out there, and I'm over here doing my thing.
Hmm. So when you're making comic books, because I'm trying to make my own kind of like little comic thing. It's not that great, but when you're starting off, what is something that you try to keep in mind when you're making a comic?
Well, I think the most important part to start with are the characters, because that's what draws people in. Like, you want to present these characters that your audience can relate to and see traces of themselves in. So I focus first on the characters, and then like I look at the world I want to place them in, and that's where you have that little give and take where like, okay, how much of the world informs the characters, and how much influence do these characters exert over their own worlds? And that I focus first on characters and the world, and I go back and forth a little bit, and then I start to see how the world they're in would generate the plot they're acting out. So that's how I start to make things. And then I'll alternate between focusing on making those mood boards, the visualizations, and then I pivot over into the writing. So for me, I have like a whole Miro page where like I have sources I'm looking to for inspiration. So let's say I have this comic, and what I'm drawing heavy inspiration from are mythologies. So on my little Miro board, I'll have like all these different links and excerpts from the mythologies, and then I have my notes branching off from it where I'm like, okay, I'm pulling this into this world, this is what I'm doing with it. It's for me to like mentally track like, okay, this is the theme, am I being consistent with the theme? Is this new edition something that's going to further push that theme along and like make this a cohesive piece, or is it fragmenting the goal here? Like I try to be mindful of that when I make it. But I have another book to recommend for comics, and it's this. So like this one, self-publishing, The Complete Guide to Self-Publishing Comics, and this is by Comfort Love and Adam Withers. I like this one. I go to it like starts off like, hey, let's figure out the characters, goes through the story building, the plotting, making panels, all that different stuff. So it's just like a fully comprehensive guide for figuring out how you want to make your comic. So I definitely recommend this book.
Okay, I'll definitely be checking that out. See what time we're at right now. Okay, we got about 13 minutes left.
Cool.
So when you're building the world, what are some of the elements that you try to keep in mind? Because I know you're saying that the the character influences the world and the world influences the character, but when you're just trying to create the world, what is something you like to keep in mind, and elements that you think should be in there?
I try to have a theme that everything is a reflection of. So like I decide on the theme, and then from there, like I think about the characters, like what aspect of these characters' lives, like how does that play into the theme? How can I use that to tell a story? Because for me, it's like my goal when I make a story is I want people to connect to these characters. I also want them to learn something about what it means to be human. So like fixate on one particular theme. And I guess a recurring theme for me is like that transition from innocence into maturity. So I focus on how these characters are developing, like the challenges in the world that force them to develop their characters fully. So like it's gonna get like really messy if I try to describe that right now, because like I'm still in the conceptual phases, so it's not fully coherent yet, but I focus on the theme because that's something that can carry across the writing and the art. If you have that theme and you can figure out the correct symbolism and designs that reflect the theme.
Okay, I'm gonna have to keep that in mind. It's such an interesting art form because it's not just like when you're creating just one piece, where it's like, okay, this is it, here you go. With a comic, you're creating basically a book, and you're having to be you have to be the actor of every single person, and you're having to draw it out. It's such a beautiful way that I think is kind of underrated. Like I know there's lots of people that like comics, but I've also heard a lot of people are like, you read comics. So it's like, no, man, it is the most innovative way that we had before, like motion pictures and stuff like that, and cartoons. You had to be able to see, you had to draw it out to be able to see what the characters looked like, how they act, their facial expressions. It brings more to the table than just like when you're reading a book and you're kind of imagining how it looks. You can at least you can see what's in the artist's mind, and I think that's great that it has that kind of representational aspect to it. So when you're creating your comic, what is your end goal for the reader?
End goal for the reader. Ultimately, I want them to have a good time. I want them to feel things when they're looking at this comic, but I also want there to be this takeaway, because one thing we tend to do when like we pull out these books, these comics, these games, is like we're looking for a break or an escape from our present reality. And in my mind, I don't know, it's a very elusive goal, but I have this hope that if someone comes and they pick up my story and they read it and they start to connect with the characters, I hope that I could possibly impart some kind of lesson or experience that they could take back and apply to themselves or the world they're in. And maybe they won't have to feel like they have to escape from it anymore.
Is there anyone that's done whose work has done that for you?
Let me think about it. I'm sure there are examples. It's just really hard to like think of that on the spot. I don't have a lot of time to think about that. That's a good one.
Right.
I might have to come back and talk about that one. For me, no, I can't think of an exact example right now. But like, I know there are authors who have done that for me. I can't think of one right now.
Okay. Well, I think it is about that time. So why don't we let everyone know if that's okay with you,
Yeah.
your Instagram and where they can find all your stuff and see your art.
Sure. So my Instagram is Avialace. It's a made-up word. Don't worry about how you pronounce it. It's Avialace. So you'll find me on Instagram. I have an art station and DeviantArt. I'm on pretty much everything. The problem is I don't post much, but hey, I'm gonna have some more free time starting like in the next few months. So hopefully I'll get back into that. So yeah, I'll be posting some more art soon. Just about ready to come out of my cocoon.
Feel it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast this week. I had a great time, and I'm going to apply a lot of those things that you told me. I'm going to get Pinterest right now, and I'm going to try to get some more references.
Oh no, I handed you off to the dark side. Pinterest.
The dark side has many temptations. But
All right, well.
Thank you for being on.
Yeah. Thanks, Ezekiel. I'll have to do this again.
No problem. Hell yeah. Bye. And I'll put your art and your extra stuff after this clip on YouTube.
Sweet. Also, thank you to everyone who stopped by to listen to me. And Ezekiel.
No problem. See you next time.
Yeah, bye.
Hey there, I'm Ash. I'm going to be on Ezekiel's podcast this Saturday to talk about my art, maybe a few other things, we'll see. But for now, I wanted to give you a peek at my sketchbooks. I have a lot of them laid out over here. Got a few different years spread out. You can see I'll draw on anything. That's like a napkin from, 2017? Got coffee filters, I don't know, anything. I'll draw on anything. But we're here to tour this sketchbook. I'm really happy with this one because it's the only one I've ever filled out completely. This is the beginning. Oop. A lot going on here. We're not talking about that page. Oop. Oh, this one's fun. I can't show you all of it, but we're gonna make some progress here. Oh, this is a page where I did some style studies from the show Invincible. Great show, by the way. Totally recommend. Got a lot of pages that are just highlighter and ink. that's my Lich King. He's dope. Moving on. Ooh, Skelly Boy for reference. You can see right here, this is where I took that style study and tried to apply it to my own characters. Oh man, can't cover everything, so I'm gonna skip a few pages. Let's see what we get. Ooh, one of my OCs. Absolutely love her. Let's see what else. Ooh. Oh, that was cool. Some things look better unfinished. Let's skip a few more pages. See what we got in here. Oh yeah. No comment, just read. And away we go. Oh, I don't like that one, but it's whatever. Not gonna like everything you make. Another unfinished piece right here. Ooh, one of my favorite OCs. Am I gonna get flagged, not safe for work now? So you can see, I try to take up as much space as I can. Don't want anything to go to waste. Ooh, a fairy right there. Oh yeah, that one's colored pencil. Little test. So I try to do a variety of things in my sketchbooks. Part of that is, proving I can draw butts. Love drawing orcs. Love fantasy just in general. Oh, hey, another one of my OCs. I call her a mermaid because she's a mermaid and a mage. I know, it's pretty great. Her name is Ellerin. Got some concept art from the early stages of an indie game I'm working on. Ooh, fun page. This one's just doodles. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna capture every angle because I rotate my sketchbook a lot when I draw. It'd be nearly impossible. Let's see, let's find a good one to finish this off on. Bear with me. That'll do. So yeah, I'm a character artist mostly, but I'll draw just about anything that inspires me. Whatever makes me happy or makes the people I love happy.